Are you gonna be short?
No, no, I agree. I mean, about the president.
Let's all growl. Yeah. They plugged it in?
We'll see.
Y'all might as well just leave that right there.
Good morning, Senators.
Morning.
On our last setting, we stopped at second reading and committal of bills. The next item on the agenda is further second reading and committal of bills. But before we proceed with today's agenda, just a few matters the Senate, the chair wishes to take care of. I want to first of all say thanks again to Madam Chaplain, Reverend Carla Culmer, for her spiritual guidance and words of meditation. The chair extends heartfelt and sincere condolences to the families of the victims who lost their lives yesterday during the tragedy at sea. The horrific accident claimed the lives of at least 17 individuals, and many are still missing. It is my hope and prayer that God comforts the grief-stricken family members. Let us all keep them in our prayers during this difficult time. On a happy note, the chair extends congratulations to our colleague, Senator Dr. Eurecia Hepburn, on a recent wedding to Mr. Duran Forbes on the 7th of July, 2022. I wish you many happy and joyful and blissful years together, prosperity, and God's divine protection upon your union. So colleagues, for the record, let the record reflect that our colleague's new name is Senator, the Honorable Dr. Eurecia Hepburn Forbes. I believe she is the senator with the longest name. The chair also extends congratulations to three very dear persons who recently graduated from university during July 2022. Firstly, my godson, Antonio Hanner, who received a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of Sussex. He is currently pursuing a Master of Law degree from the University of Sussex. Antonio is the son of Miss Tanya Hanner, a partner at Graham Thompson, and Mr. Valentino Hanna. Congratulations, Antonio, and I wish you all the best in your continued studies. I'm also the proud aunt of my niece, Janika Nicole Frederick, who graduated from Glasgow Caledonia University in Glasgow, Scotland, with a Master's of Science degree in physiotherapy and orthopedic specialty. She is looking forward to serving her patients and our beloved country. My youngest niece, Morgan Michelle Adderley, also graduated from the University of Oxford with a master's degree in public policy. She is the first Bahamian who was accepted to the Masters of Public Policy program at Oxford's Blavatnik School of Government. I'm very proud of her accomplishments. In the gallery today, the chair recognizes the recently elected executives of the women's branch of the Progressive Liberal Party. Can you please stand? In particular, the chair recognizes the president, Ms. Patricia Clare, first vice president, Mitzi Turnquest, assistant treasurer, Monique Adderley, and Public Relations Cecile Wallace. The new administration will govern under the theme, Breaking Barriers, Leading with Heart. I thank you for coming here today and welcome once again. Right. The chair wishes to advise members of the general public that after today, the Senate will commence its summer break and will resume late September, early November. Wishing you all late September, early October. I guess we're all very tired. Wishing you all a very safe and happy summer. I believe that the Vice President would like to extend welcome as well.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, for your leave. We also have some other special guests in the gallery today. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to the the newly elected executive members of the Progressive Young Liberals, the youth arm of the Progressive Liberal Party. If you would please stand. So here we have with us today Mr. Jordan Clark, who is the chairman, K. Reva Roll, the youth officer, Omega Curry, Myrtle, the chaplain, Elon White, public relations, Ambria Seymour, treasurer, and Thomas Evans Jr., the executive member. So as many would know here, I got my start as a member of the Young Liberals and then becoming chairman. So I'm particularly excited to see these young progressive people who are now taking up the mantle. I know that youth activism in politics is also very dear to a number of us at the table. Senator Quinton Lightbourne got his start in PYL as well. He was the treasurer of PYL. And I know on the opposite side, Senator Maxine Seymour was one of the biggest, most avid torchbearers you could find back in the day. So I know that we all, even though we're on opposite sides of the divide, we can appreciate when young people take up the mantle to give back to their country and get involved. So warm welcome to the members of PYL. You were chairman of Young Liberals? Oh, Senator Darren Pickstock was also chairman of Young Liberals. I didn't know that, so good to know that. Okay. Everybody was in PYL now. Everybody was in PYL. I just have two more guests that I would like to welcome. I would like to welcome Miss Caitlin Forbes, who is a summer student at my law firm. So as everyone would be aware, the government has now recommenced the summer program, and we got a call from the Ministry of Public Service asking that we take on a young, bright summer student who had just graduated high school and is on her way to college. So we were happy to welcome her. This is her last week at our firm, and so we thought that it would benefit her to see the law from this side of the divide, how we make and pass laws in Parliament. So welcome to Miss Caitlin Forbes. And last but not least, I would like to welcome Miss Ryan Kemp. Miss Ryan Kemp is actually my personal assistant. This is the young lady who keeps my life organized and keeps me on the right track. And she said, you know, we have a lot to do even though I'm in Senate. So she wanted to come today to make sure that in between the breaks, I get my work done. So welcome to Ryan for coming here today. So thank you for your indulgence, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Griffin. And the chair, of course, warmly welcomes the members of the Progressive Liberal Party, Young Liberals, and also Ms. Caitlin Forbes and Ms. Ryan Kemp. Thank you so much for coming, and we hope that you enjoy today's Senate session. Whenever we have a full gallery, it makes my job a little bit easier, so let's see if that holds true today. Okay, let's now proceed with the agenda of the Senate for the second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to welcome everybody in the gallery today. There's certainly a full gallery. And just to be clear, in my former stint at this, when I was the Member of Parliament for Elizabeth and the Minister of Financial Services and Trade, I was the parliamentary representative for the Progressive Young Liberals. And so I provided them that connection between themselves and their group and the parliamentary caucus and the cabinet of the Bahamas. I'm not sure if they have maintained a parliamentary representative to assist with the young liberals, but it's certainly something that should be encouraged. And it was very enlightening to work with the youth of our party as we govern the nation as well, and to provide that interconnectivity. So I welcome you. And as we say on the rally stage, PLP? All the way. Madam President, I rise today to move for the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. The passage of this bill, Madam President, is a fulfillment of a promise in our blueprint for change to expunge the records of minor offenses due to violations of the COVID emergency orders. This amendment, Madam President, corrects a grave injustice of the former administration, imposing criminal violations and records on scores of Bahamians for minor violations and even unintended violations of the emergency orders that were issued ad nauseum to the point where the general public may not even have known what restrictions were in place at any given point in time. Madam President, we here today, this New Day government, we are correcting the egregious wrong on the Bahamian people put in place by the former F&M administration. Madam President, we faithfully promised to expunge COVID convictions from the criminal records of those persons who had fallen afoul of the emergency power orders and were convicted of breaching the COVID-19 restrictions or failing to comply with their requirements. The bill before you seeks to make good on that promise, seeks to amend the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act to treat as rehabilitated those persons convicted of certain offenses specified by the minister by order, expunging offenses specified in the schedule of that order. Due to the need for transparency and scrutiny of the exercise of expunging of records, Madam President, the affirmative parliamentary scrutiny procedure is included in the bill for orders proposed to be made by the minister under this new provision that we find. Accompanying this bill is an order declaring the relevant offenses in respect of which convicted records may be expunged. Madam President, these amendments and corresponding order are structured in this way for a reason. The bill provides for the general authority of the minister to declare certain persons rehabilitated. The bill further provides for the mechanism of an order that sets out what offenses are regarded as rehabilitated. The order prescribes a mechanism in itself whereby the offender will make application to the minister to be regarded as rehabilitated under the law. Madam President, the design of the bill and the order are so to ensure that necessary checks and balances throughout the process as the expungement of records is a significant action for any government to undertake. The bill creates the framework, Madam President. The offenses are prescribed by order, and the order having to have the affirmative approval of both houses of Parliament. This is a significant check and balance because we vote on it, Madam President. The order cannot be issued by the minister alone. It must be reviewed, analyzed, scrutinized, and affirmatively approved by both houses of Parliament. Regardless of the misinformation and the fallacy that was prescribed in that other place, Madam President, this is how this mechanism works. Also, in using the word minister, as we all know, Westminster Convention means that this is the cabinet of the Bahamas. My colleague across from me will tell you that that is in fact the case. Whenever you see the word minister in a piece of legislation, that does not mean the minister has unfettered discretion to undertake those actions. What that means is that the cabinet of the Bahamas will review and make that determination, and then the minister carries out that determination of cabinet. That's the Westminster system in which we govern. So in that other place, when they seem to make the entire debate about the unfettered discretion of the minister, that was clearly false And clearly, a lot of them don't even understand the Westminster system that they intend and want to govern under. It's a true shame, and they should really educate their junior members better, Madam President. Cabinet will decide the offenses to be expunged, and Parliament will approve those offenses. There is no unilateral authority in anyone to expunge these records. Furthermore, the offender must make application after expiration of 6 months following conviction, creating another check and balance. So let's get this clear. You have an amendment to the bill that sets the framework of how we will expunge these records. That amendment of the bill says that the records to be expunged, the convictions to be expunged, will be prescribed in an order, and that order must have the affirmative approval of both houses of Parliament. And then the order of which we speak has an application procedure in it where you also make application to the minister. So there is another vetting of the particular application of expungement. This is how the framework works, and this is how the framework preserves good governance and the checks and balances of the system as a whole. There is a reason this is framed this way. And unfortunately, in that other place, the opposition couldn't understand that reason. If consistent with the other place, the opposition today may try to make the point, as I said, that the minister has unfettered discretion. And I would assume that's now in none of their contributions, because we have clarified that point for them. The opposition will also likely move to amend the framework that I have just discussed for no reason at all. And in fact, to make it, they would advocate that their amendment makes it a framework that is less about good governance, fewer checks and balances, and actually would give greater discretion. I have explained the thought process behind how we've designed this framework on the rehabilitation of offenders, which provides the greatest integrity to the process. An attempt to an amendment is a rush to judgment without thinking or understanding the basis of what we do. Let me say that again. Any amendment brought in this place by the opposition on this bill is a rush to judgment without understanding the framework of why we are doing what we're doing. So I look forward to see what they do in committee, Madam President. This bill, Madam President, as indicated, and the corresponding order are needed due to the harsh and unfair governance by the former administration during the COVID pandemic. We understand that this was new. We understand that no one had governed during such a global pandemic in our lifetime. But the fact remains, Madam President, the F&M government governed themselves poorly, and they penalized Bahamians for trying to live during incredibly difficult times. Madam President, arresting people trying to get water at the standpipe, arresting coconut vendors trying to make enough to live, having us go to the food store by our last name, double standards for some in the West as compared to the rest of us that live throughout this archipelago. Yes, there wasn't a playbook of what to do. We acknowledge that. But good governance is just that, good. And bad governance certainly is also just that, the F&M way. The former Prime Minister, the competent authority at the time, effectively admitted in that other place to the poor governance of the prior administration when he gave his full support behind the actions that we do today. I suggest the members on the other side likewise seek such forgiveness. Today, we fulfill yet another promise to the Bahamian people, Madam President. We do what is right, regardless of the wrongs done prior. We waste no time in ensuring the Bahamians are treated with dignity and the respect that they deserve. Madam President, with those short words today, I move for a second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act and for the Senate to approve the Rehabilitation of Offenders, Expunging of Records, Offenses Order 2022. Thank you, Madam President.
Sir.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder, for your contribution. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Randy Roll.
Thank you, Madam President. I too wish to join with you and others and say welcome to our members in the gallery, persons, to my sister, Ms. Patricia Clare. Love her dearly. She's my heart and strength, and I'm very proud of you, and I look forward to the great work that you will do, and of course to your executive team as well. Also wish to recognize those of the PYL. And again, I know we have some summer students in the gallery as well. So want to thank you and welcome you all as well. Madam President and fellow colleagues, a pleasant good morning to all. I wish to begin my contribution this morning by first thanking my spiritual advisor, Bishop Neil C. Ellis, for his contributions, his prayers, and support during these times. Bishop Ellis, I know this, they had him in the news earlier this week. And, you know, certainly he's a man who's been through a lot. He is a man who hears from God. And he is, I'm very inspired by his word and his teachings. And I know that if whatever is in his future, he will certainly not move unless he hears from God. And so, thank him for that. I wish to extend congratulations also to the new Commissioner of Police, Mr. Clayton Fernando. We thank you for your continued service to country, sir. I want to make a quick observation. While traveling through Linden Pinland International Airport, I noticed it's always filled with police everywhere, which is necessary, Madam President, because it is one of our ports of entry. There's SIB, CIB, DEU, and all the other letters of the alphabet. But while working downtown, I've never in recent time seen more than 6 police officers patrolling Bay Street. Let us remember that our cruise port is our largest port of entry. Furthermore, our country is now back in business thanks to the hard-working, dedicated staff of the tourism industry and other stakeholders. Please, Mr. Commissioner, I know you to be a man of business. I will come and see you myself. We need more officers downtown. Now for the business of the people. We assemble once again in this upper chamber to provide to the Bahamian people an act of change. A law is valuable not because it is a law, but because there is right in it. The lives of many were changed abruptly September 1st, 2019, Madam President, when a monstrous hurricane Dorian made landfall in the Bahamas, demolishing our most populous northern islands, Abaco and Grand Bahama. We braced for an anticipated devastation that we had no idea would be embodied in our history books for the rest of time. To this day, almost 3 years later, we are still picking up the pieces. We are still mourning, and our survivors are still in dire need of support from every avenue. On last Wednesday, we were able to pass the modification of an act that will commence the healing of a nation that is still grieving, Madam President. The amendment to the Evidence Act to provide the presumption of death in the circumstances of peril. That short piece of legislation will indeed go a long way, not just for those impacted by Hurricane Dorian, but for those that endure the wait or still in the process of waiting the initial 7 years for a piece of document that was critical to moving on with their lives post-Hurricane Dorian. I wish to commend the government for swiftly creating just a fraction of the much-needed solution to easing the pain and beginning the mental process of recovery. To those survivors that were greatly impacted, and to our people as a whole. Today, I stand to second this piece of legislation that serves as a continuous strategy of the commencement of a second chance for all Bahamians, Madam President. A bill for an act to amend the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, expunging of records. You see, Madam President, the remainder of the Bahamas may have been spared from Hurricane Dorian, but little did we know a global pandemic caused by an infamous COVID-19 was right around the corner. And it's impacted, Madam President, from Bimini in the north to Great Inagua in the south. Lives were lost from the virus itself. Our economy that thrives significantly on tourism suffered a severe shock. I'm speaking about some 7 million visitors to zero, Madam President. Jobs were lost. Families could not eat. And the education of our youngsters, youngest of minds, were interrupted. And then came an even greater tragedy. The unreasonable and strict restrictions from the competent authority. You all remember that name? I want to put emphasis on the cruelty of this legislation, of the criticalness, of this legislation being passed today. The absurd restrictions implemented by the most competent authority under the former administration, lockdowns and curfews, technically created a new category of criminals in our country, Madam President. People who did not know what the inside of a police station or court building looked like prior to COVID-19. I'm speaking about even our precious, dedicated elderly found themselves before the courts facing criminal convictions and costly citations in relation to breaches of the emergency orders. We can all agree that attempting to adapt to the new norm during the peak of COVID-19 was a struggle for everyone. But now, here we are as a country, still in the recovery process post-Hurricane Dorian, and the pandemic faced with unnecessary hiccups of our citizens being denied gainful employment and other meaningful attempts of self-development and mobility simply because their background checks or required vetting are returning with criminal convictions pertaining to breaches of the COVID-19. This legislation, Madam President, is necessary. As outlined in our Blueprint for Change, we are committed to assisting the most vulnerable in our society. And Bahamian empowerment remains at the top of our agenda. The power invested to the minister to declare any of all persons to be treated as rehabilitated in respect to the offense, have his conviction of the offense be considered as time being spent, and have his record for the criminal offense expunged, is a step forward in the process of empowering Bahamians. This legislation, Madam President, is timely. While the negative outcome of the lockdowns, curfews, and emergency orders may have highlighted the need for this legislation, it also allowed us to look at a broader perspective regarding rehabilitation here in our nation. For far too long as a country, our focus has been on the arrest and detention, but not much on the correction and rehabilitation. Madam President, it's hard to lock up an individual, put him amongst hardened criminals, and then expect one to be reformed. Madam President, no government is perfect, and that would be unrealistic for any of us to think that they are. However, we are a government that is determined to get it right. And the only way to get it right is to be in touch with the people that placed us here to carry out what is needed, especially when it comes to their rights. The law being passed in this Honorable Senate today not only affects those that found themselves on the other side of the law during the dark hours of the emergency orders, but to those whose records have remained smudged over the years because of trivial misdemeanors. This legislation, Madam President, is timely. Rehabilitation does not only cover restoring health, curing addictions, or providing therapy. Rehabilitation is also restoring an individual to former privileges of reputation after a period of disfavor. While some actions not be expunged from the minds of those directly affected by the misconduct of others, some wrongdoings do not deserve to be forgotten. However, we must remember that forgiveness serves as a vital ingredient of correction and rehabilitation. I stand in solidarity with my fellow colleagues on the passing of this legislation, Madam President. This legislation is a second chance, Madam President. Thank you.
It has been moved and second that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, as you would have noted, yesterday's tragedy at sea that claimed upward possibly of 17 lives of suspected illegal migrants who were allegedly involved in human smuggling activities is beyond tragic. It's no way to describe knowing that the ocean would have consumed the souls of persons who were trying to find a better way of life. And so my heart goes out to their relatives and to the communities who love them, and may their souls and the souls of all the faithfully departed rest in peace. Madam President, I would likewise like to extend sympathy to the late Honorable Vernon Simonette's family. He would have served as Speaker of the House of Assembly from 1992 to 1997. And so I commiserate with them on his passing, and I pray that God would strengthen them. Like you, I would like to congratulate Mr. Duran Forbes and his wife, I'm gonna try to get this right, Senator the Honorable Dr. Arecia Hepburn Forbes, on their recent nuptials. And thank you for the invitation. I did have a great time. It was a down-home party. I likened to a Cat Island regatta. And my husband and I happened to drive separately, and I have to say that he arrived before me and left after me. So he had a really good time, and so congratulations. I would also like to welcome the polarized visitors here today. You know, I don't know, I feel uncomfortable in here, Madam President. I feel quite uncomfortable in here, but I could on this side. And so I would like to welcome the women's branch of the Progressive Liberal Party led by the chairperson, Madam Patricia Clare, my fellow Rotarian. And of course, I would like to welcome the Progressive Young Liberals and all the familiar faces there, especially Mr. Alan White. I think he's the future Prime Minister of our Commonwealth. I would also like to note that the F&M Women's Association, no, I'm good. The F&M Women's Association and Torchbearers also have new presidents. And it would have been nice to have more balance here today, but hopefully when we resume after the summer break, we can invite them so that we can welcome them here as well. So welcome to our persons visiting from the Progressive Liberal Party. And as the chaplain would have noted, we're all Bahamians who love our country and who want to serve and see a better way of life for us all. So welcome, welcome. Madam President, I rise in support of the Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill and accompanying Rehabilitation of Offenders Expunging of Records Offenses Order 2022. Madam President, during the last administration, the Bahamas Rehabilitation of Offenders Committee expunged criminal records of those charged with petty crimes. And so it's a known fact that the opposition supports the expungement of records. Because, Madam President, criminal records are permanent. They make it difficult for persons to move on with their lives and find gainful employment and reintegrate into society. Criminal records are met with stigma and discrimination, leaving those with the records on the periphery of society, feeling excluded without access to basic opportunities. In fact, such persons aren't even allowed to travel. And we all know how Bahamians and our new Prime Minister and his cabinet and love to travel. We love to travel, Madam President, and when we have a record, we can't even travel. And so, Madam President, almost all employers conduct background checks, and they require potential employees to present criminal records as a prerequisite for employment with their organizations. And many applications have on the form the question, have you been convicted of a crime? Some potential landlords even want to know whether or not, you have a criminal record before they consider renting their places to you. And so once you're convicted of a crime, that follows you everywhere. Everywhere an individual goes, they carry that with them. It's like a tattoo on you, a permanent badge, or even a shadow, Madam President, that follows you around. And so to expunge someone's record is really to erase, completely remove or destroy their record of criminal conviction. In simple terms, Madam President, to expunge one's record is to give them a bly. Bly is a common Caribbean term, Madam President. I cannot say where it originated, but I know that it was popularized, I think, first by Jamaicans. And no doubt in the Bahamas, we're also familiar with the word. A bly means to give someone a chance, give someone a break, to have mercy on them, give someone a second chance. And Madam President, I say that the bill that is before us here today, the Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill 2022, seeks to give persons a bly. Now, the government has particularly and craftily positioned it as a mechanism to pardon those convicted of crimes due to the COVID-19 emergency orders. And by now, everyone would have heard of the person going to care for their elderly relative. And we all know the coconut vendor. And of course, our knowledge has been obtained from the sensationalization of these arrests by the New Day government. Somehow, though, Madam President, they've conveniently evaded reference to the man who was stopped for breaking curfew, who on search of his vehicle was found with an illegally loaded gun. They've conveniently avoided referencing the multiple bars shut down, the persons who broke curfew to party and have a good time. Madam President, They have done an exceptional job in demonizing the competent authority and minimizing the emergency orders. They have done such a stellar job that it is easy to forget the purpose for which the orders were created. Objective citizens and residents would recall that we were faced with a global pandemic spurred on by a dreadfully contagious disease. The curfews and lockdowns implemented in our country were not unique to our country. Countries around the world had ordered their citizens inside, not as an act of punishment or terror or a chance to yield power or flex muscles. The sole purpose of the orders in our country and in other countries was to protect citizens and residents. The world was in a crisis, and during a crisis, the public depends on its leaders to make tough decisions and to protect their safety and well-being. Governments are not only elected to throw parties and dance and travel and have a good time and put on fireworks displays. Crisis management is also one of the major responsibilities of government. Whether or not we agree that the emergency orders enacted in the Bahamas were right or not, the point is that they were law, and the consequences of defying the orders were consistently communicated to the public. We all knew the risks of breaking curfews and lockdowns. Nonetheless, there were circumstances in which persons defied the law with what has been justified as good cause. And we agree that's why we support this amendment. But lest we forget, there were also instances in which persons simply chose to break the law. Who knows what motivated their defiance? I don't know where the guy who the police stopped with the loaded gun in his car was headed, God forbid. I don't know where some of the people who found themselves with criminal records as a result of the pandemic, I don't know what they were doing. But what I do know, Madam President, is that not everyone who got a criminal record as a result of the pandemic was going to care for an elderly relative or sell coconuts. That was not the case in every case. Madam President, some of them might have been seeking out an alternative partner after being stuck at home with their spouse for extended periods. I don't know what they were up to. Suppose they were perhaps leaving underground party venues. I heard there was a lot of partying underground going on. In fact, at a time when crowds needed to be avoided for public safety. Madam President, maybe some people decided that they'll make an extra stop on the way in or converse a little longer, thinking that they could beat the clock and get in before curfew. I cannot say why so many persons were charged during the pandemic. But what I do know, Madam President, is that they were not all charged because of some life-threatening or life-sustaining reason. They were not all selling coconuts or en route to care for an elderly relative. Madam President, nonetheless, we all agree that those deserving should be given a bly. As I have said, the opposition is very clear in support of this legislation. We understand that as a young man, someone might decide they want to try marijuana, and the thought of one joint ruining the rest of their life is really regrettable. We also know the importance of our citizens and residents having access to gainful employment. When persons cannot work, Madam President, it affects all of us. What options are there to generate income when you can't work? What else are you going to do? So when we give persons with minor convictions the ability to have their records expunged, it benefits all of us, Madam President, because they have an opportunity to become contributing citizens and residents of our Commonwealth. And that is why it is called the Rehabilitation of Offenders. It's not simply a get out of jail card and expect that they'll, do their part, but there's a responsibility to demonstrate that you've been rehabilitated. And when the government gives a bly, it's important what someone does with the bly, Madam President. For some, that bly is the only thing between them and their dreams. They will take that and apply and finish education. They'll get a better job, more decent paying job with good benefits. For some, their records, Madam President, they may be able to take their children away. Like I said, they may have been planning before the pandemic to travel, and now that they had a record, they maybe have been making excuses to the kids why they wouldn't be able to go on the trip. So now they'll be able to go away, Madam President. And so we support this amendment, but I want to make it abundantly clear that I do not support anyone breaking any law in our country. And I personally believe, Madam President, that if we ignore crimes of any kind, petty or otherwise, that is the mark and the start of what could be the descent of law and order across our Commonwealth. I've always believed, Madam President, that if you let people run the lights or use their cell phones or don't wear seatbelts or throw trash out of the window and go unpunished, that you strengthen their resolve to commit more crimes. It's like this, Madam President. Sometimes, you wonder why you hear a story about somebody who, did something, okay? And so they got caught stealing by reason of employment. And you hear the story and it's between a certain period. From this period to that period, it's multiple acts, multiple amounts. And sometimes I wonder, why is it that someone would do that? Why is it that they would keep doing that? And Madam President, I cannot say because I'm not a behavioral specialist, but I believe the first time they may have taken something, they had access to the cash, they might have needed the money. I don't know what the case is, because, we like to give people a blind, oh, well, you have to understand if they didn't get the money, so, they took it. So they took it, they realized they didn't get caught. So next time they took a little bit more, and then next time they took some more, and then they kept taking and taking and taking. Why? Because when crimes go unpunished, when people are not prosecuted, when people are not punished, and when justice is not swift, people are empowered to just continue to do more, Madam President. And so the point of the matter is that you cannot allow people to go unnoticed or unpunished when they break the law. Okay, Madam President? But there are cases where people deserve a blight. Madam President, studies have actually shown that in jurisdictions where certain petty crimes go unpunished, incident rates escalate. Again, Madam President, along with the opposition, I support the expungement of records when and as necessary. But I do not want us to become a blind society. I think it's a slippery slope. And we've all heard, Madam President, of the former mayor of New York, Rudolph Giuliani. He managed to reduce, Madam President, serious crime in the city of New York drastically. And all he did was simply enforce the laws that weren't being enforced. Not the major laws, Madam President. I'm not talking about robbery and rape and murder. All Mayor Giuliani did was enforce the small laws. I'm talking about public indecency, jumping over the subway gate, drinking as a minor, loitering, graffiti, things like vandalism, Madam President. You imagine that he was not met with very much support when he did this, Madam President, because at our core, I believe as humans, we're forgiving. And we like to be judge, jury, and executioner. So when someone does something wrong, we decide and we justify it and we say, oh, it's all relative. They only did this. They only did that. Give them a break. Give them a blight. And it starts sometimes from in school, Madam President. Our child goes with the wrong color socks, and then the mom says, oh, the socks under the pants, you can't even see it. Why they had to give you a demerit? Madam President, we know what the school rule is. We know what color socks they're supposed to wear. And when that child thinks that they come home and mommy says, oh, they didn't have to give you a demerit, the socks underneath the pants. That's where it starts. It starts there. And so it's like, oh, well, don't worry about it. So, Madam President, when Mayor Giuliani decided that he would punish all crimes and enforce all laws, he managed to cut crime overall. Madam President, murders went down by over 70%. Robbery by over 60%. Total violent crimes in New York dropped over 50%. And property felonies fell over 60%. The mayor, Madam President, was relying on a theory that political scientists, Madam President, Wilson and Kelly in 1982 talked about. And yes, I hear our fellow senator knows it, the broken glass. Okay, they asserted that failure to address so-called petty crimes encourages criminals to engage in more serious felonies, causing communities to basically spiral into urban decay. The article the scientists wrote was called Broken Windows, and they had a whole theory about how if you have a broken window and you don't fix the broken window, well, that's gonna lead to graffiti. And once you have graffiti on a building, Madam President, people, they start to loiter. And Madam President, once people loiter, the scientists said that they are more likely to engage in prostitution. And after prostitution, the next step is gangs and drugs, and of course, possibly murder. So, Madam President, again, while we might give persons a blight, we have to be careful not to become a society known for giving a blight. Over the years, we hear it. persons, it happens. Persons don't pay utility bills in certain cases. And then when utility companies have difficulty, they have difficulty operating because they don't have the cash flow. People, they need money to operate. It's simple. And so the utility bills compound and compound and compound. And then a local utility company puts out a notice that there may be mass terminations. And Madam President, I'm not talking about during the pandemic. I'm talking pre-pandemic. I'm talking in general, okay? So using the mayor's example, you know, we allow things to get out of control and they don't pay the bill. And then when we decide they're going to be mass disconnections, everyone says the same thing. Oh, give them a blight. Give them a blight. They didn't pay their bill, just give them a blight. And I'm not talking people who decided on food against utilities. I'm talking about people who still managed to have fun and game and do whatever, but they just chose not to pay it, Madam President. And then we just decide, oh, I'll just give them a blight. We talk our way out of things, Madam President, as a culture. Give them a blight. Oh, give them a blight. We make excuses for not following the rules, not obeying the rules. The traffic cop stops us, and we want to explain why we ran the light, Madam President. And we want them to understand. And if they don't give us a blight, I understand some people find other ways to get a blight because they don't want to pay the ticket. So, Madam President, we have to be careful about this. When we come back from away as Bahamians, we want the custom officers to give us a blight, okay? Local artists have sang songs about it. We tell people we're going to pay them back a certain day, and then we don't. And then we say, oh, give me a blight. And so, Madam President, all I'm saying is that in some cases, like the coconut vendor, like the person heading to care for their elderly relative, people might need a blight. But there's not every case in which this is not a mass situation where everyone deserves a blight because there's no excuse for breaking the law, even ignorance. We have to take responsibility for our own actions, Madam President, as a people. Okay, the law is the law. And if we break the law, there are consequences. But there are cases in which some people deserve a blight. Imagine a college student coming home, you know, on a roll, on scholarship, doing well in college, and leaving a relative function, and someone says, oh, let your cousin drop you off. And that vehicle is stopped. And the cousin happens to have an illegal firearm in the vehicle. And because you're riding along, you may get charged. In that case, Madam President, that person perhaps deserves a blight. But at the same time, if we know that there's a possibility of getting charged before we catch a ride, we need to find out. Listen, you have anything in this vehicle I need to know about? Because I only want to get a ride home. Okay? So, Madam President, we just have to be careful, and we have to be aware that, yes, there are situations that deserve a blight. And yes, some people during the pandemic who now have records might have been selling coconuts or might have had a valid reason for breaking curfew. But that wasn't every case, Madam President. Madam President, as I drive along the road, the fact is the law is the law. And if I decide at any given time to take $2, stick it out the window, and trade it for a bag of sweet ganaps on the side of the road, and then the police show up and decide to arrest the seller for stealing and arrest me, Madam President, for receiving or possession of stolen property, what am I supposed to say? Give me a blight? I didn't ask the person whether or not they, or how they attained the ganaps before they sold them to me. I didn't buy them from Bamsey, or I didn't buy them from PAIC. I didn't buy them from the farmer's market. I bought them from somebody. And so if I received the goods and they happen to be stolen, what, give me a blight? We have to be aware, Madam President, that the law is the law. Whether we agree, whether we disagree, the law is the law, Madam President. And so in this case, we support this because we recognize that in some cases people need a blight. But Madam President, we also want to make sure that when we give a blight, Madam President, that is deserved. And our people don't take advantage of the blight. So we look forward, Madam President, to the people who get their records expunged, contributing to society. And Madam President, since we giving people a blight today, Madam President, I'd like to call on the New Day government to throw the beaches and parks contractors a blight. Pay them what you owe them, Madam President. Stop making decent, hard-working Bahamian citizens march and stand up and hold posters, you know, day after day after day. Throw them a blight. Madam President, since we're throwing people a blight, let's throw the Bahamas Union of Teachers a blight. Madam President, on salary increases. Let's throw them a blight, Madam President. Let's throw the employees at the airport authority a blight, Madam President. Let's throw the employees at the Princess Margaret Hospital a blight. Let's throw, Madam President, those on social assistance a blight. Where's the RISE program, Madam President? Month after month after month, we're waiting. People are standing in the hot sun. Even if there is a tent at social services, it's insufficient coverage based on the volume of persons. So people have to stand in the hot sun, waiting for their payments. Now this government promised the RISE program. We need it. Throw us a blight. Get it going sooner, Madam President. I'm told so many personal and heart-wrenching stories of the way people are often treated when interacting with social services. And I'm not saying it's in every case, but I'm saying that I'm told that in some cases, after waiting from early in the morning, when they finally start to call names, if you're in a distance, I understand, and they say John Doe, and you didn't hear them quite well. Sometimes you go to a door and you say, did you say John Doe? Yeah, you missed your name. Come back tomorrow. This is what people have told me of personal accounts. So we need the RISE program. I support it, but how long is it going to take? Throw us a blight. Okay, throw us a blight, Madam President. A senior told me the other day that in Foxville, as an example, that there's no access to bathrooms, and they told me that there's a particular business that was nearby. You could have used the restroom, but they don't allow you anymore. The Chinese, they tell me, but all the businesses, and that seniors are sitting there waiting on long hours, and they need to use the restroom, and there's no restroom. So throw us a blight and hasten with the RISE program, Madam President. Okay? And so, Madam President, maybe they could throw us a blight on disclosure of the confidential settlements agreed and paid over the last 6 months, as well as those currently in negotiation. It's our money. We have a right to know. So, Madam President, like I said, on occasions, we have to throw a blight. And so let's throw the public a blight as leaders and work together for a better Commonwealth, putting partisanship aside to create a Bahamas for all Bahamians. Women, men, children, persons with and without disabilities, elderly,
Order.
youth, and rehabilitated
Order.
offenders, Madam President, because they have elected and appointed us to serve. And so let's always do our best to serve with distinction, with dignity, and with pride. Madam President, I support the Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill 2022. Amen.
Mix up like corn salad.
That's the way you do it. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Maxine Seymour, for your contribution. As many. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Darren Pickstock.
Morning, Madam President. Morning, Senate colleagues. Madam President, this morning, I'd like to start with joining you, Madam President, in extending condolences to all the persons who would have lost their lives at sea yesterday. Madam President, with your leave, I would like to just hold a moment of silence for those lost souls. Thank you. Madam President, I would also like to join you as well in congratulating the elected executives of the Women's Branch, particularly my good friend, Patricia Clare. I would also like to recognize Mrs. Turnquest, the first Vice President, Mrs. Adley, and Mrs. Albury. Thank you for joining us today. I would again like to congratulate the newly elected members of the Progressive Young Liberals and their leadership, Mr. Jordan Clark. I hasten to just remind my Senate colleague that I was the chairman of the PLP Young Liberals back in 1999. Yeah. And on the NGC and the Candidates Committee. Madam President, Madam President, I'd like to,
thank the good Lord for giving me an opportunity again, waking me up this morning and allowing me to come to this place to contribute to legislation. I do believe that, law impacts culture. And so I take my job very seriously. I would like to also say thank you to our Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip E. Davis, for entrusting me and giving me this opportunity to serve. Madam President, I'd like to just begin by highlighting, first of all, that in the Blueprint for Change, as I have here today, and I can share a copy to my colleagues opposite if they need to see, but in the Blueprint for Change, it states, pre-shadowed, expunge records of minor offenses due to violation of the emergency orders. This is what this document is saying. This is the Bible, okay? This is the promise of the government to the citizens of the Bahamas.
Are you tabling?
We foreshadowed that, right?
Senator Pickstock, are you prepared to table the document?
Absolutely, I am. Madam President.
Please table it before. Brian,
Yeah.
you're sitting now. Thank you.
Madam
Thank you,
President.
Senator.
So I implore the government. I would like to thank the AG and his team and the party for bringing this legislation forward speedily and swiftly to give relief. Thank you. Madam President, my Senate colleagues, sometimes I really believe that listening to Senator Seymour, you get the feeling that they were not in government for the last 4.5 years. They have selective memory. They don't remember anything, right? They don't remember that they were government. Mind you, it was short-lived, but nonetheless, they governed for 4.5 years. And so I would like my Senate colleague to just reflect on everything that she's saying and put it in context. And, please reflect on that. My Senate colleague also indicated that she raised some story about a gentleman who was caught with a firearm. Well, I just wanted to remind her that traveling without an illegal firearm is an offense, right? It is an offense, and so it was not a COVID offense, right? It was just it was an offense.
Senator Pickstock, we need to speak to the chair.
Sure. Beg your pardon.
Okay, thank you. Continue, Senator Pickstock. Are you yielding for the senator?
No, I don't know what I'm supposed to be yielding for.
Oh, no. Let her speak for herself. She doesn't need your help. Please proceed. Please proceed, Senator Seymour. Wait, order. Order, please, in the Senate. Senator Seymour, are you standing? Is there an interruption?
Yes, Madam
And
President.
what is the? Okay, proceed.
I rise on a point of clarification as the Speaker.
Well, that's why I asked. If in order for you to rise on a point of clarification, he has to yield. The first question is, do you intend to yield? Are you yielding? Senator Handfield. Senator Handfield, you're not recognized by the chair. You are not recognized by the chair. Can you please proceed, Senator Pickstock?
Yes, Madam President, I will yield.
Okay. Senator Pickstock is yielding now. So Senator Maxine, can you please proceed with your point of clarification?
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to thank Senator, the Honorable Darren Pickstock as well for yielding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
We have to follow order, and I thank you. I appreciate you for following the order here.
Thank you, Madam
Established.
President.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify that while I recognize that possession of an illegal firearm is indeed an offense, the point of the matter that I would have raised in my contribution is that the reason that vehicle was stopped is because the person was breaking curfew, which then led to the police officers searching the vehicle and discovering the not just illegal gun, but loaded gun that the person was in possession of. And so we can't say that that vehicle would have been stopped if it was not breaking curfew, which was what led to the gun being discovered. So it wasn't that they needed emergency order in order to bring a charge against the person because, of course, carrying an illegal gun is an offense in and of itself. What it is that they broke curfew, which led to the discovering of that weapon, Madam President. And so I just want to make that abundantly clear.
Thank you for your clarification. Senator Pickstock, can you please proceed?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Madam President.
And order for the rest of the senators, please. Thank you.
Madam President, thank you. Yep. Madam President, you know that, he could have been stopped in a roadblock, right?
Order.
I would like to
Senator
believe-
Pickstock, can you please proceed with the
I
people's
would like to
business? Thank
believe
you.
That the police are doing their job regularly. So I've made my point. Madam President, while the term and word curfew is not new to the Bahamian lexicon, the history of our country details that the active and profound legislative usage of a curfew had its most horrendous experience in the Burma Road riot of early 1940s. The Bahamas was a crown colony of Great Britain. The governor was British. The top tier of civil service was British. Garrisons of British soldiers, in particular the Welsh Guard, was stationed in Nassau. During the eventful 1970s, 80s, and 90s, and the advent of the 21st century, the word curfew kept reappearing as a legal tactic to be forced and used to curtail movement, restrict freedom and constitutional rights, and give the police superpowers. My research shows no elected government of the Bahamas from 1962 through 2017 ever advanced the term of policy or practice of curfew as part of their public policy as a deterrent to any social event or maladjustment. It would take Dr. Hubert Minnis and the Free National Movement government 40 plus years to reverse this position. The COVID, while they were only in office for 4.5 years, it would take Dr. Hubert that short of a time to reverse this position. The COVID pandemic saw extreme measures for health safety being taken around the world. Our little Bahamas was no exception. Between the belligerence of hand sanitization, face masks, quarantining, came the emergency orders and the creation of the all-powerful, incompetent authority. Today is not a time for Monday morning quarterbacking. This is neither the time nor the place to attribute blame or associate a culpability with decisions that may have been made with the most earnest and honorable of intentions. In a world where millions were dying every month and the COVID disease remained novel, scientists were changing opinions every day. Even in the great developed United States of America, a presidential election had its major differential how the two presidential candidates would deal with the COVID pandemic and the development and rollout of a vaccine moving forward. The world got the vaccine, and the conspiracy theorists got new fodder for their reckless cannon blasts. Now here we are in our little Bahamas, where emergency orders and the directive and the competent authority left scores of Bahamians saddled with criminal offenses for misdemeanors committed in breach of the emergency orders and lockdown orders. Madam President, in our Bahamas, an offense under the Penal Code goes directly onto one's CRO. In local parlance, it is referred to as a police record. Citizens are required to apply for such at various police stations, and these are issued for a nominal fee. There is another debate for another place and another day to discuss the pretense and usefulness of a police record in the 21st century Bahamas. But I leave that for now, Madam President. The police record is a certificate created during colonialism to map, chart, and follow the activity of the subject from birth to death. Now, Madam President, what do I mean by that? Let me show you. The Bahamas is a unique territory which has a U.S. pre-clearance facility for non-Americans wishing to enter the United States of America. Therefore, a Bahamian can travel by way of a visa issued by the U.S. Embassy here or on their unblemished police record. A Bahamian adult parent with an American or U.S. visa or a police record wishing to travel with an infant child will have to produce a police record for that child, whether that child is 1 day old or 17 years old, to the U.S. authorities. That is one major form in which a police record can become an encumbrance. Madam Speaker, the police record is also required by most employers in the Bahamas. The police record, in many instances, an unblemished one, is more important to an employer than a high school diploma, BJC, or BGCSE. Madam President, it stands, therefore, that this thing called the police record is of vital individual importance to a Bahamian. Amazingly enough, in countries close to the Bahamas, where Bahamians love to travel, such as Jamaica, Cuba, and the Eastern Caribbean, these countries have no interest in our police record. One only need apply and get the visa or be landed by their immigration office upon arrival in those destinations. Even the United Kingdom, which pinned the police record on us, there is no requirement for a Bahamian citizen to produce a police record today to be landed in the United Kingdom. But we are Bahamians, and we have an inalienable right to go to Florida as many times per year as we so choose. There was the notorious viral video of the Bahamian girl who proudly boasted that she don't go to Miami. That's for locals. She said, this chick goes to Florida. Madam President, the COVID police, their jobs, they interdict, questioned, arrested, detained, and charged a number of Bahamians with emergency order offenses. The courts of the land allowed the fullest transparency of justice with guilty pleas and verdicts from the bench. Convictions were posted on the police records of offenders. Madam President, the question for us, which has been answered, is this one. Is it fair and right for a Bahamian caught breaking curfew during the lockdown in order to go to the public water pump for water to bathe, drink, flush the toilet, or cook with it when there is no alternative to be so saddled with such an offense on their police record for the rest of their lives? That's the question. The enterprising youth who has a coconut stall or kiosk on the roadside, locked up, fined, and paraded before the courts. In some instances, the police followed with charges vis-a-vis the coconut vendor's business license. The middle-aged son who has to go check on his ailing and elderly mother or father who does not live with them. The hungry person going around the corner for a meal or to have a roof to sleep on at night. In Freeport, there were disgusting reports of persons known to be homeless being rooted from the abandoned buildings and cars where authorities knew they slept and being paraded before the courts. How can any of this be right, Madam President? How can it? The thought here is, of course, given the integral importance of how a police record, which is unblemished, fits into the life of every Bahamian citizen, is it fair and just and sensible to create situations to further impinge the police record of citizens? Madam President, the government of the Bahamas says it cannot be right. This is what the New Day government is saying. To quote a former prime minister, We must be a government of second chances. I say it again. We must be a government of second chances. I again applaud the Attorney General and his office and the Cabinet for taking into consideration the cultural importance and national significance of righting this wrong created on the watch of the incompetent authority. The competent authority. The Bahamian people suffered immensely. The lockdowns brought psychological, mental, physical duress and pain. The economic stagnation still lingers, Madam President. The restrictions on the ability to move from place to place created more claustrophobia. However, Madam President, I will be the first to say that the competent authority and the emergency orders during the COVID pandemic should not be condemned or misunderstood. The decisions they took, I am sure in many regards, they felt were noble. Fixing this wrong today is not to say to the Bahamian people that the safety of all citizens, the health and well-being of all, and the integrity of our borders during a pandemic, which the modern world was uniquely unprepared for and uneducated about, is not a weighty task. Let us not foolishly brush aside the dire harm in which the whole world dangled in a balance. In this world of ever-changing dynamics, we will face more challenges. The government will be called upon to lead and to guide and to make decisions on the cusp of the moment. All we can hope and pray for is that we arrive at a common sense consensus, that in all that is done, that the civil liberties of the individual not be constrained or compromised. We came dangerously close to some very draconian measures. It is my hope that we all learn from these experiences, Madam President. Madam President, with that, I support the bill to expunge the records of persons so affected by the lockdown and emergency orders. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Darren Pickstock. As many? Yeah. Yes. Senator Pickstock, we would like for you to table the document that you referred to, please. I think it's best if you table it and then you refer to it. Okay? So let him table it. Yeah, just let him table it and then you can refer to it. You can pass it back. Thank you, Senator Pickstock. You can give it to. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ruben Ramming.
It's always arise by the grace of God and for the good of our Commonwealth to make my contribution to the Rehabilitation of Offenders bill. I stand with my colleagues who recognize those persons who needlessly died in the recent boating accident. I say needlessly died because for the last almost 2 weeks, weather had been unbecoming for small craft in sailing in the Bahamas. And it had not been a good time for any fisherman unless they have a sufficiently large boat to be out there. So I call it reckless. And I condemned it in the highest possible way because it was blatantly reckless to go out in this kind of condition. And I support my colleagues in requesting a moment of silence because we are all souls created by God. And I'm a firm believer in reciprocity. I live by do unto others as you'll have them do unto you. So I take law and the execution of laws as very, very important. I take it so important that even in the cases where somebody, in my eyes, may be seen as blatantly wrong or worthy of the harshest punishment, I will stand at the highest mountain and defend their right to due diligence and procedures, because I want to, if I find myself in that case, to be afforded every opportunity afforded to me under the law. I'll give an example, though an unpleasant but true one, and it's not a political point, it's a point that clarifies my position. I remember when Samuel Knighty Knowles, and my understanding was he had one more habeas corpus case. And the debate was, oh, he's going to lose that in any event, and I hope he did. But unfortunately, he was not able to take advantage of his very last habeas corpus appearance because he was whisked away. I have no grief for the brother. But that bothered me because I said if that was me and my child, I want them to have their last say and fight to the tooth and maximize the benefit of the law. When I look at things, I try to look at it in context. And again, I revert back to the support of the Senate and having a moment of silence for those 17 that died. But I want the Senate to have a moment of silence for the 822 Bahamians that died during the COVID pandemic. Let's have a moment of silence. While we would have our issues as to how things may have been done or how things may have felt, the reality is we would be hard-pressed in this country to find any other time, even including Dorian, that in such a short span, over 822 Bahamians died as a direct result of a virus or pandemic or a hurricane or a storm in this country, in our living memory. Let's not consider the over 22,000 plus persons, and many of them who were inflicted in near death. I remember our famed comedian Sawyer Boy speak about, as a young man, how that hit him. And a doctor told him if he had not come in that day, he would have been dead. I remember the many viral videos in this country with people finally saying, COVID is real, because it hit them and hit their homes and hit their families. I know of people now, even in my family, even a year after COVID, still suffering disabilities triggered by the advent of COVID in their lives. That was the worst of times. It was critical times. And although we can armchair quarterback, we could never erase the fact that many of our people had gone to the hospitals, many of them have died, and many of them had seen their lives flash before their eyes. And even just recently, a good friend of mine got it for the first time, and he messaged me when I say, hey, how you doing, man? He said, boy, I never know this could be that bad. It's a real life situation. It was a war. It was a battle. And to me, it's insulting to our memories for us to take it any less than a memorial to the pain and the suffering and also the grace of God for keeping us and bringing us to a new place. In a time where we have now learned to adapt to COVID-19, which is still around. And we all know when it comes down to introducing or starting something new, especially when it has to be done swiftly, that is very difficult to do in a democratic society. So again, I say that God's peace be with those families who still recall the loss of their over 822 Bahamians that have died with COVID. I commend the Progressive Liberal Party with the intent, as stated in their blueprint for change, as read by the good Senator Darren Pistol. But there are some questions that I do have to ask, because intent is one thing and action is the next. The blueprint, and also as articulated in the opening salvo by our Attorney General, that the intent of this amendment is, and I'll read from the blueprint, to expunge the record of minor offenses due to violation of the emergency order. And that is consistent with the intent that was stated by our Attorney General. For that, I can wholeheartedly agree, But I do have to ask that if the intent is to expunge the minor offenses related to, surrounding, and because of the violation of emergency orders, why is it that the amendment in this act, why is it an open check? I would like for the Attorney General, he can probably do this wrap up, to help us understand that, because the way the act is written, it doesn't seem to narrow the scope of the expungement to that dispensation in time of persons who would have been impacted with that. It seems to leave latitude for it to live on and further go on to be able to deal with, but the intent here, and this is where the questions that was raised by Senator Seymour has its validity. Because if it is the case that the intent is to address that, as stated in the blueprint for trains, and as stated, then this amendment should be one that had been, just as we did the special amendments last week, to impact the time frame for in which a person can be declared dead as a result of Hurricane Dorian, which is a special circumstances. We could have addressed that within that scope, and the amendment could have been identified as the expungement related to. But it is open, and because it is open, then it leaves wider room for other considerations, and even in the view of some, even possibility of abuse. I temper the word abuse with the words as expressed by the Attorney General, as he would have expressed that in the act, the intent is, and as stated, that the law will be adjudicated in the House of Assembly and also in the Senate. The order. When the order under this act is prescribed through the hands of the minister and obviously vetted through cabinet that the person or persons under that scheme at that time, meaning obviously there will be phases going on to this. It will be done a few more times, not just related to the COVID incidents that occurred under the emergency order, that from time to time, the minister would present to cabinet who would adjudicate and then make presentation to the House of Assembly and also through the Senate for the approval for these persons' names to be expunged from the record. It raised a few procedural questions. Because having been a backbencher in that place, we all know that the information that is afforded to on a cabinet level is not afforded to on the regular parliamentary level or even on the senatorial level if you're not in cabinet to make the level of decision and discernment that may be required in this specific incident, which is very, very important. I would like to know how that procedure will look after coming from cabinet to the House of Assembly. Will it be a package or a list of names, or will it be a package that will be presented that persons in the House can look at? And because it is individual names, just like how we did the amendment of the Pension Act, it's personal to the individuals. Does it mean that we will have some insight into the specific individual or review or access to that application to be able to best afford every sitting elected official or appointed senator the ability to be able to make a rational decision as to relate to the viability or the qualifications of a person under that particular act? So that picture, the picture of how that is to be presented is very, very important to me. It's very, very important to me and also very, very important to the persons. And I would give an example, and many times this is for public information as well. If it is just to be a list of names and we must be satisfied that a cabinet, any cabinet, would have approved it and sent it to us and we just look at it and say, listen here, okay, yes, yay, nay, or whatever else. I don't believe that is sufficient information for you to be able to sit there and make a judgment on an individual basis as to whether a person should be expunged. Secondly, it also raises fundamental questions because as it relates to the overall procedures, that if in the event that a person's name were to be presented, because it targets an individual, and I don't think it should be presented just as some generic block when it's designed to target persons. As I used the example, the pension bill, we knew who we were approving the abridgment of their pension time, their service time, so that they could qualify their pension. We understood that. The sensitivity of this matter, which is criminal, also raised issues in my mind of how does that work also to the intent of the very act. Let me explain, Madam President. If the intent is to expunge the record of a deserving person, and if that person's name is presented in a packet to the House of Assembly and tabled for debate and adjudication, how does that impact the privacy of the individual to whom we seek to expunge for the benefit of that person being able to have an ordinary life without this particular minor offense being attached to their name? What is the difference between the Hansard and the police record? Yes, there are glaring differences, but they are both public records. And you can still look at a record and determine that Senator Ramming had been expunged for X, Y, Z. and still make a private determination, even though it may not be on the record. What do we have in place to ensure that the intent of the sponging is actually realized in the process getting there? Are we going to be able to determine that certain portion, and that's difficult, of the Hansard to be sealed because it's a public record, it is done on television, it's done on TV, it is done on live stream. How do we address that to ensure? And what about more sensitive cases as it relates to persons who are juveniles? How do we go about that to also best protect their interests? And then, you know, we are a victim of democracy. So I bear no complaint about the reality that the majority will have their way. That's the reality of democracy. It could be a red majority, it could be a yellow majority. So it's fish fry fish. So the same open door, the possibilities of a majority going and bringing a set of names down the throat and making it happen is almost a mute thing, although it's a clear and present danger. It is just, and I'm speaking to the public, it is just a consequence of democracy. I'm speaking openly my disposition to a series of persons who would have raised that thought in the general public. But I'm wondering, and I'm hoping the AG could elucidate, as he knows, my intent is for in the public interest, for them to appreciate what is going on here, the further reasoning why it should be extended. Senator Maxine had a very, very solid point that is morally true, scientifically true, across the board. We have heard many times in our country, commissioners of police, when they wanted to attack serious crime, they would have stated openly that we're going to start cracking down on minor offenses, because they realized that an efficient way to begin to curtail the major offenses is to crack down on minor offenses, traffic violations, et cetera, because in the same vein, that's how many times they capture the guy who's out on a warrant. You see? I don't presume you should assume what I want to say because I'm standing and I'm quite frankly able to say what I need to say, good Senator, as you know. So the reality is this has historically been a policing strategy. So the question is, how far do we go, and what are we signaling? And what are we signaling? I say that because just as I said in the previous bill debated as it relates to the victims of Dorian, that our law as presently as it stands does allow and have a mechanism through the prerogative of mercy, whereas persons can actually seek expungement of their record. If that need to be expanded, then that should be probably expanded, but that currently now exists. But how do we get to a point where we look down the road, we don't find ourselves possibly in regret if we release and we create an open door where we should have just created a clear path? And that is my concern as it relates to the matters that we have here at hand. I've heard in the debate a lot of innuendos about the matters as it relates to COVID-19. I've heard a lot said about the coconut boys, and I've heard a lot said about everybody else. But many times in life, we always got to remember it's the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth in many instances. And I've found myself concerned, and I've seen the videos, and I've heard from the farmers, and I've heard from the people around of the fact of how the industry, which we sought also to regulate, as you knew, there were also grants made available for coconut boys to get themselves properly licensed, to buy the tools that they need, and including the umbrellas and other things to get set up. That was offered under the previous administration. But at the same end, we must not play on the sympathy and our love for our striving young people, as most of those coconut boys are, and not realize the very fact of even the devious nature in some of them. I have personally borne witness to them going in person's yard, and when I say them, again, I'm speaking about the select ones, not all persons in any category. Is bad. I'm speaking about what has been witnessed and stealing coconuts from persons. I've heard about the complaints. Every day I drive, I still see the wastage on the side of the road. I stopped buying it because I've had opportunities to see persons coming out of the bushes, defecating, and then coming back out to sell the product. So what I'm simply saying, in helping people, there's need for regulations to ensure that when they do things, they do it lawfully. Right now, I have a friend who has a farm, and because there have been so much theft on the farm, he just stripped everything on his farm, took all his chickens and gave it to somebody, and just frustrated because of the level of theft that goes on over and over and over again. So we need to be careful at how, at one instance, we seem to fix a problem and do so in a way that empowers another. Then I also saw, as it relates to COVID-19 and this bill, there seemed to be an overarching tone as if the government and the legislative that passed the law was the one who created this big problem as it relates to the person going to the pump or the person doing this. We all know that this country governance is made up of the legislative and the judiciary. And we all know the power of the police force and the commissioner who has security of tenure. When we pass laws in this place, that's why we have amendments. I remember there was one time when Bernard Nordage protested against the harshness of the penalties with the possession of, I believe it was guns and firearms, with Prime Minister Ingram would have passed. And then there was some adjustment down to it because he felt it was too harsh. There's reasons why we amend. But guess what? It's the judges that adjudicate, and it's the policemen that bring charges. So when that man went to the pump and he met up with a policeman who does not have the sense of discernment to understand that the man just walked out of his house, is carrying a bucket and water, and could charge that man under the law where he had latitude. And then we could turn around and blame Lyndon Pillman or Perry Christie or Hubert Ingram or Mr. Minnis or even Bragg Davis for the action of somebody who did not even follow the spirit of the law. That's wrong, and that's frankly very ignorant. When we have judges of all people, and is it, what do they call it, a summary conviction when the judge could just, and these persons go toward the judges and could tell the judge and show the judge, I had to drop my brother who is an essential worker to the hospital, and I was driving back home, and the judge still put that on the record. There is a problem with judicial discretion. And when the man who is taking his sick mother to the hospital and during curfew and show proof that he was at the hospital, and the police has no discretion, and the judge has no discretion. The law allow. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. It doesn't matter. The judge has discretion in that matter. There is latitude. See, of course, listen here. There are persons who go and they commit. We just heard, let's raise the case that came up with when me and Monroe commented on the young lady that the minister, Wayne Monroe, National Security, commented on the young lady as it relates to the rape charge. I didn't say much about that because I understand what he's trying to say. You didn't like it. I didn't like it. He had his opinion as a lawyer, what he would have said. The judge had their opinion, and we saw the law did give latitude for even more, didn't it? So how could we cancel out what I am saying in terms of judicial discretion. What I'm saying is the fact that we as a society in times of crisis must remember that we fire on all cylinders. It is not just the police, it's not just the courts, it's not just the government, it's the nurses, it's the fathers, it's the mothers. Because we were in a dark time in our country where over 822 people died. So in looking at this, I understand and I appreciate the need for it, for the amendment. Yes, I asked the question, and I asked the question so I can get a good answer as why did it exceed the stated position in the blueprint for change? And also, how will we be able to combat the unintended consequences that may be as a result of sending a message out to a lot of persons that you can probably get off on this or that. I'm not even going to drift into the political side of it, because like I said, democracy has its consequences. But these are very real questions that we need to answer and we need to address. In our society, there are so many things that cause us alarm. I remember a court case, and I remember the current issues that we're still dealing with. Even now, I remember the court case that went forward with a young man. I remember a statement that was made by the judges as it relates to governance in our judicial system. And this matter was in relation to a fellow called Mr. Higgs. And I'm going to read his, and I'm going to table this for you, Madam President. This is about a man tortured. So the man seek damages for false imprisonment for over 7 years. And it says, a man who suffers from he's now suffering from intense schizophrenia and post-trauma stress disorder, is seeking damages from the government for false imprisonment. For 7 years and 4 months, false imprisonment, according to his writ filed in the Supreme Court. Alfred Higgs, a resident of 8 Mile Rock, Grand Bahama, was unlawfully imprisoned in January 2014 and released on June 2021 without ever being charged of a crime. I can't put that on the PRP government who's in charge there. Something went wrong. Some people didn't understand, or something went wrong. He was not given the reason for his arrest. Who do you blame for that? He wasn't given a reason for his arrest, denied legal representation, held in a maximum security section of the Department of Correctional Service, then the Her Majesty Prison for 7 years and 5 months. During this time in maximum security, he was allegedly beaten, verbally assaulted, and buggered multiple times. During his time being in prison, without even being charged, he was beaten, allegedly beaten, verbally assaulted, buggered multiple times by other inmates, making him fearful and paranoid. He was also allegedly subject to poor quality food, no sanitary conveniences or ventilation. He's forced to sleep on the floor, use a 5-gallon bucket to defecate. You all know about that part, or heard about it. He was also allegedly verbally threatened, intimidated, and physically touched by various officers. Before his release, he was transferred to the Carmichael Road Detention Center for 7 days for immigration processing. I mean, it's like we got to find something. He has sought damages for assault, battery, arbitrary and unlawful detention, false imprisonment, as well as breaches of his fundamental rights and Constitution. And here's the point, and it says, according to court documents, Higgs was unlawfully detained by a premeditated and systematic policy observed by the government that existed for decades and was intensified in 2014. Now, 2014 obviously is under the PLB, but I could say that, but I would not. But something went drastically wrong.
Just did.
Something.
Would not.
No, but I said I could say, I want people to understand. No, don't misscrew it. Because I could jam a knife if I want to, but I'm showing something. Because I'm showing the difference between, because it naturally happened in 2014, and the court said it intensified. That does not mean that the administration itself intensified. Don't turn a statement and make it vile while I'm going through it. It shows that even under any administration, there can be systematic failures within it, and one of these was one of the most drastic one. And I know the AG is familiar with this case because, familiar with this case. And this man here is also seeking damages. I'm wondering if he's one of those who would be included in that $7 million odd settlement that would have been you see? So I'm hoping that in the many cases that we see out there, that justice do apply and people find a way through the system and where they can actually be justified. So guess what? I agree that under COVID-19, because it was a special time and a special place and we had to do what we need to do, that should not necessarily be a permanent fixture on people's record, even though I clearly know that there were persons who had blatantly put other people at risk during that time. We saw the videos of the nightclubs that was packed, so jam-packed, it looked like a ship of immigrants coming in, packed in together like sardines. And we saw that even some of the weddings, and we saw them even at the funerals. We saw those things. And we saw those things. And we saw those things. We knew and we heard that many of the illegal nightclubs going on at that time were operated by police officers. Gladstone Road and many other places at a time when they was struggling to keep the death toll down. To keep the death toll down. But this is the time that we live in, Madam President, that we need to many times just keep our eye on the prize. If the intent is to deal with the persons who are affected under COVID, let's do that. But let's be careful that we don't open up a door, we don't open up a Pandora's box that will enable the possibility of abuse by the human nature. Even though the safeguards are in place, I would like to hear the answer to the questions about those safeguards, because those safeguards in itself, to me, if they're not done in a particular way, will not afford the legislative body to be able to properly discern what they are adjudicating in terms of the individual offenses. And if they do have access to that information, how do we ensure that the person have their privacy when their where their records is actually expunged and is not definitely recorded in the Hansard? And then final to that point, one of the reasons why you track minor offenses is because it also shows trends in the lives of people. Science have proven that as it relates to serial killers, you could track a trend in their lives. Young children who have been abused, neglected by their family, who would have started young, and I'm not talking about shooting birds and eating them. I mean those who would be killing young animals and doing certain things. And there was a clear pattern over time that they realized with serial killers. Many times the small infraction gives us a window into where a person would go. And many times we found out, and I would repeat again, that the police end up securing major leads or cracking cases because they were able to execute it. I'm concerned that at the end of the day, I don't want the courts or our officers to feel that because something is going to be expunged or appear to be easily expunged, that it should weaken or discourage them for executing the law in every form in both small and major cases. Because if that is the case, then we could find that officers may find themselves turning away from a traffic offense, which may lead to a drug bust. Or turning away from an abuse under the section that this applies and saying, you know what, it's not going to go here or there. Or a case where judges may assume that the penalty that they would have properly determined to be fitting to the crime is going to be, once it would have been implied, it's just going to be expunged away. So with that, Madam President, I'm hoping that the AG, in the interest of the public, can actually elucidate a bit further so that the average Bahamian person who not only will benefit from this law, but who may be skeptical of it, can have a better understanding of the process. It is not sufficiently important that we do it just in our mind's eye, but that it is done at a level that the public can understand it from their perspective. Because although we may be the one feeding them this amendment, it is going to be them who is going to have to consume and digest this amendment. And we want to ensure that they understand where it goes. And I hope within the explanation, it also sends a message to those that are out there that we are not going to be encouraging the breaking of the law, even in a minor way. But we are sensitive to the reasonable needs of people. We are sensitive that a person really should not have to carry a burden if it was a result of a youthful indulgence or being at the wrong place at the wrong time. We are truly considerate of what the need for rehabilitation. But your rehabilitation is to place you back into a lawful society, not to give you, as the senator say, a bly, so you could feel that you always have a way out if you keep recidivating toward your actions. We need our people to appreciate that there is a consequences. There are consequences to things as disorderly conduct. There are consequences to things as minor violent excursions. There are consequences to carrying around illegal drugs. And with that, Madam Senator, I stand and I say without contradiction that I do support this and look forward to the explanation to the questions that I would have arise in this debate. With that, thank you.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Reuben Ramming, for your contribution. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin.
Madam President, I rise today humbled to support the Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill 2022. On July 31st, 2020, newspaper headlines read, "After 2 nights in prison, coconut vendor fined $800. The stories went on to read that coconut vendor Marvin Joseph spent 2 nights in prison as he awaited sentencing for selling coconut jelly and coconut water without the requisite approvals. It read that in June, he was given a second warning, but just 2 weeks later, he was caught in the same spot operating his stand.
Okay.
Jared Higgs of R News interviewed Marvin Joseph. And in his own words and in his own voice, he said,
taking a risk because my mommy working. And I was the only boy in the family. And it's the only way to make $1.
he said, I'm taking a risk because I'm the only boy in the family, and that's the only way my family can make $1. That's what he said. It's recorded directly from R News. Marvin has seven younger sisters, and at that time, a 6-month-old of his own that he had to support in an economy that was shut down. Of his prison time, he said,
There are like 7, 8 people in one cell. Ain't nowhere that we use the bathroom.
he said, it hard, like 7 or 8 people in one cell, nowhere to use the bathroom. Madam President, I don't care how you slice it and dice it. Jail was no place for Marvin Joseph, and an $800 fine was preposterous for a young man who was risking his freedom to feed his family. Madam President, I take offense, and I know many Bahamians today watching Senate take offense.
Order. Senator Barry Griffin is on the floor. Order in the Senate, please.
Madam President, I take offense, and I know many Bahamians watching today take offense to the flippant way in which the opposition senators speak about arresting and making criminals out of otherwise law-abiding citizens. They have no remorse, and this is why they were voted out. Their callous, out of touch, and quite frankly, inhumane way in which they think about and govern is bad for the Bahamas. Madam President, I say again that I am humbled to be in this place supporting this bill that seeks to make a pathway to clear the unjust criminal records of people across this nation who were dehumanized by an uncaring and out-of-touch government. Madam President, I am humbled to do it even more so, having spoken personally to Marvin Joseph, the young man who became the face of the effects of a government who lost touch with their people. We spoke about the hardships he experienced in trying to feed his family in a closed economy and the hardships that were brought on him from being arrested. Marvin was to be here today, but when I spoke to him this morning, he said he's on the road getting coconuts, hustling, continuing to make $1. Madam President, this bill is yet another occasion of this administration keeping good on its promises to the Bahamian people. In our contract with the Bahamian people called the Blueprint for Change, at page 14, under number 2, under the heading entitled Compassionate Social Relief and Strengthened Security, we committed to expunge the records of minor offenses due to violations of the emergency orders. We say in our blueprint, and I quote, "We will rescue the most vulnerable and discouraged in our society." Madam President, the history of the implementation and enforcement of the emergency orders under the last administration is one that should be studied. It saw the dehumanization, demoralization, and debasement of the most vulnerable in our society. Senator Maxine Seymour referenced wanting to enforce all the laws without exception, but remember, all laws are not just. Slavery was legal, but it was immoral and unjust. Senator Seymour referenced U.S. Mayor Rudy Giuliani and his war on crime in New York City. She rightly said he arrested many people. Crime went down, but protection of civil liberties went out the window. She would be wise to point out that, like here in the Bahamas, during the FNM's emergency orders, in New York, the poor, the vulnerable, and the Black were too disproportionately targeted and arrested. In New York, panhandlers and squeegee operators were targeted, just like here in the Bahamas, where coconut vendors were targeted. So if Giuliani was their guide, they succeeded. She should also mention that Giuliani's stop and frisk policy was declared unconstitutional in New York. Madam President, we only need to look at the daily newspapers and social media feeds of Bahamians during the period of March 2020 to August 2022. page after page, post after post, chronicling the convictions of the poor and vulnerable people for breaches of the draconian F&M emergency orders. This bill we debate today calls for the insertion of a new section in the existing Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, which its primary objective being relieving Bahamians of the burden of convictions according to an order by the minister that must be affirmed by both houses of parliament. The order that has been tabled provides that any person convicted of any offense specified in the schedule may, after the expiration of 6 months following such conviction, be considered rehabilitated. The schedule to the act then refers to any breach or failure to comply with any rules prescribed in regulations and orders made pursuant to the proclamation of emergency orders made under the last administration. Madam President, this bill creates a more expedient process of expungement than we have seen in the past, cutting the time period from 2 years to 6 months. It goes without saying that we are now beyond 6 months from the end of the emergency orders, which this government has ended. So, Madam President, the effects of this will be that Marvin and anyone who was convicted of an offense under the emergency orders almost immediately can make an application for expungement. With the stroke of a pen, this government is upending the injustices and misdeeds of the F&M administration. Madam President, I say injustices and misdeeds because while we give the former administration that they were faced with an unprecedented challenge, Martin Luther King Jr. said it best when he said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." Madam President, it is clear to all who can see that the former administration on this issue stood on the wrong side of history. And from their attitude in here today, they continue to stand on the wrong side of history. They used a sledgehammer where a scalpel would do, with the effect that their laws seem to disproportionately adversely affect the poor, disadvantaged, homeless, quite frankly, the vulnerable in our society. To put it in context, there are known public figures who admitted to breach of the orders, yet they were not dragged before the courts, convicted, or fined. Yet, Marvin, a humble, hardworking young man of very modest means, now has to deal with unjust criminal conviction on his record at just 20 years old. Madam President, this is not right. This is not just. And this here is the sort of injustice this bill will remedy. Madam President, this government, we don't tear down our young people. We don't tear down our entrepreneurs. We don't tear down the hard working class Bahamians who are trying to make an honest living. We lift them up. We raise them. We put them on a pedestal. We exalt them and we support them. The Bible says that the Lord will prepare a table for you in the presence of your enemies. So Marvin, you told me that you will be watching this morning. So I present you before the members of the former administration that oversaw your brutal and unjust incarceration and all who sat idly by while it happened. I present you before this Senate. I present you before the entire Bahamian public, and I praise you, I congratulate you, and I honor you. I want to tell you that in me, you have a supporter, and in this government, you have a friend. We pledge to do all that we can to support you and young men and women just like you, who have vision and dreams, who have the resourcefulness to start your own business, who have the hustle and fire within you to wake up every day and hit the concrete to hustle to make an honest living. And to that end, I told Marvin that I am purchasing 100% pure, refreshing, delicious Bahamian coconut water straight from the exotic palm coconut trees of the Bahamas from him. And Marvin has agreed that at the next sitting, he will bring it here for us himself. So Madam President, with our 2 meat at lunch, we can enjoy Bahamian coconut from a hardworking and industrious young man. This is what the PLP means when we say we support our young people. This is what the PLP means when we say we support entrepreneurship. This is what the PLP means when we say Bahamians first. This is what the PLP means when we say it's a new day. We not only changed the law to make it a little bit easier and a little bit better for Bahamians, we truly support our people. So, to Marvin and to all Bahamians who were unjustly arrested, ticketed, fined, and dragged before the courts for breach of the nonsensical and inhumane emergency orders of the last administration, I say to you, help and hope are not on the way. Help and hope are here. They are here in this government. I support this bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin. As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Darren Henfield.
Recognize the young people who are here from the Young Liberals. I think it's good that young people show an interest in politics in our country. You are the future. And we have great hopes that you will lead us after many of us have left this place and retired. Me personally, and I'll go somewhere where I could just put a line in the water and fish. I'd also like to commend the performance of our elite athlete, Shawnee Miller-Weibo, who on the weekend brought tears to my eyes once more as I heard the national anthem of the Bahamas being played, as she dominated the world once more, as she continues to do. My only regret is that Stephen Gardner, my homeboy from Abaco, people think he's from Moores Island, but he's not. You know, he's actually from Murphytown. But he went to Moores Island with the good pastor. Yeah, and trained to run the 400. And we know what he is, but injuries stopped or prevented him from participating in the games recently held. But our future looks very bright in track and field internationally. And we hear that Shawnee might retire from running the 400 and focus on the 2. I believe she will destroy them even there if she decides to do so. I'd also like to join with you, Madam President, in lamenting the deaths of so many migrants from Haiti yet again. We all can recall this is an ongoing matter that happens periodically in our country. I remember one just in 2013, where a vessel grounded somewhere in the Exuma Keys and people died and perished. I remember one in 2019, one which I was involved in intimately, when a vessel grounded just off of Marsh Harbor in the Keys, in the central Abaco Keys, and people perished to the point where we had to bury some of them in Abaco, and those that could be addressed by a proper mortician were sent to the capital to be interred. This has been a long-standing problem, of which I think the Prime Minister is absolutely correct. The Bahamas is in no position to absorb great numbers of migrants. In fact, I believe the international community has to do much more in ameliorating the circumstances which lend to such useless deaths. We don't say it as much as we ought to, I believe, but most migrants who come to the Bahamas from the south are en route to the United States of America. Most of them. That's been my experience, and I can say that emphatically as a member of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force all of my life. That's what I have been saying. Dr. Dawn Marshall, in one of her writings, calls this issue the Haitian problem for us. And it's been ongoing since the late 50s to this point, where we brought migrants to the Bahamas to help us in farming and other pursuits, and they never left. Particularly in Abaco, places like Abaco and Andros, where we see the large preponderance of this issue. We led, during our administration, a mission to Haiti to speak with the Haitian government, to look at how we can treat better with this issue. Because unless you share a border with Haiti and unless you can convince them that this is a detrimental practice, AG, I'm afraid this is going to be with you for a while longer. I know that we have been invited, the Prime Minister has indicated in his press conference, with a CARICOM contingent to go to Haiti and begin to speak to the issues that they have there more directly on the ground. We are the only country in the community that has a permanent presence in Haiti. When we were in office, we offered CARICOM the opportunity of establishing a presence in our embassy in Haiti so that we could address these issues. Haiti is what you might characterize as a failed state. Gangs rule the day. It's unsafe. It is the most impoverished country in our region, in the Western Hemisphere. And people will continue to leave Haiti to find a better way of life unless we can give them reasons as neighbors in the international community to stay. There's no reason why Haitian migrants can't come to the Bahamas through a regularized fashion, by a regular work permit, stay for a period of time, and then go home and give others the opportunity to do so. But before we can make any real strategic effort or step to correct the issues that trouble Haiti, we have to emphatically come to the place where we determine by strategy that these are the steps that we're going to take. I served in Haiti for 6 months doing peacekeeping, and Haiti is a peculiar place. There has to be first restored law and order, so the gangs will know that they don't rule the day in Haiti. There has to be a return of normalcy in governance. Since the death of Jovenel Moïse, Haiti has been, before then and since then, has been imploding. And it will continue to do so unless the international community, the Bahamas does not have the capacity on its own to take and house untold numbers of migrants from Haiti or anywhere else. And we do not have the capacity on our own to continue to deal with the influx of migrants. Home then becomes the responsibility of our country to house and to feed and to look after socially and the rest of it. And any Bahamian who's right-thinking should encourage those who think about these ill-fated trips to not do it, because they often, too much, end in absolute tragedy. You know, my colleague who spoke before me mentioned Martin Luther King and about how one stands in the time of adversity. I'll only say to that, the only thing I'll say to that is the end never justifies the means. When you talk about Giuliani and what he was able to do, it was incredible in New York. What Senator Seymour spoke to was Mayor Giuliani's position that he would no longer stand for people who slept under overpasses, remember? Overpasses to just step out onto the verge. Then a law-abiding citizen stopped on the stop sign, stand in front of their vehicle, spray the squeegee bottle on their windscreens, and clean the car, and then tax them $5 before they left. That's the point that Senator Seymour was seeking to make. The end never justifies the means. These were poor people who slept under overpasses. I want to begin by saying that we support wholeheartedly the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, the amendment that we're making here today. We do. No, we do. We do. We support it. Because like my good friend said, everybody deserves a second chance. I don't know anybody sitting in this place who hadn't had a second chance, except for some of these young people who didn't really need one, right? Everybody deserves a second chance. But I also want to put on the record here today, very briefly, that COVID-19 was a novel or new coronavirus for which the world had no cure. Or no known cure was available for the COVID-19 virus. For the coronavirus, it was novel, it was new. It was new. And so the world, not only the Bahamas, the world moved to segregate infected individuals, right? So we saw the lockdown first coming in China, and then the lockdown because China's lockdown was so effective, the lockdown then sort of waved all across Europe. Some places more incredibly ridiculous than others. And then eventually here. The world determined that segregation of infected individuals was the only way to treat with the virus at the time. And that's not new. That happened historically. The smallpox and the plague, the bubonic plague, and all the rest of these things that historically happened and occurred, history has a way of repeating itself. The only difference this time was that science has advanced so quickly that we were able to receive a vaccine. I think the first one came out of the UK in record time. And so we were faced with, as a government, a tremendous challenge. How do you sequester, or how do you maintain the security of your entire country, which cannot take a spread, right? As opposed to allowing everyone to continue to do whatever they felt like, go wherever they felt like, and business as usual. Because it was more than the individual's decision to do whatever they felt like. It became a community decision. I was concerned. I have 3 young men who live in my house. Well, 2 now, 1 left, right? I was concerned that they would go out and bring the virus home to us, my wife and I. And so my wife instituted her own policy. When you came home, you had to desanitize, you know. She would have the Lysol or whatever. And the first instance, you left your shoes and your jacket or whatever at the door, right? And you sanitized before you came into the environment of the home. And so we had to make a decision to survive. Sometimes I do, right? Depending on where I go, right? We had to make a decision to survive. Our tertiary level healthcare facilities cannot stand an abundant influx of infected individuals. We don't even have the capacity, as relates to the medical professionals, to treat them. You know, we learn things like intubation, and where a doctor, a professional, would have to come and assist your breathing. I don't know how many of those we have in the Bahamas. We certainly don't have them in any of the Family Islands. And so you were faced with this impossible position that you were placed in, where if an individual got COVID-19 on the Family Island, he had to be placed into a tent, or she, put on an emergency flight, and flown into New Providence. The hospital just couldn't hold a loose population acting as it pleased, to the detriment of the rest of us. My colleague, Senator Raming, indicated that some 822 persons died. I commend you that more people are still dying from COVID-19 are still here, you know. It's still among us. I saw on CNN yesterday, I think it was, 400 Americans are dying every day because of the COVID-19 infection. And then, God forbid, we heard the Minister of Health say the other day that we have now present in the Bahamas something called monkeypox, which was just declared by Dr. Tedros from WHO as something that the countries of the world need to be concerned with. And so I understand what we're trying to do here today. I think it's the right thing to do. Did we do everything right with COVID-19? No, we didn't. You can judge us. History will judge us. But we did what we thought was in the best interest of the Bahamian people. We were commended for what we did. We were commended for what we did internationally by members of the international community, by senior members of both sides of the political divide. We were commended. We were commended for saving Bahamian lives in the actions that we took. Were the actions draconian? Judge us by it. Do you think we enacted the emergency powers orders to stop a gentleman from going to the pump and retrieving waters for his ailing grandfather home? We must be careful. We must be careful. We must be careful how we become so emotive when we're trying to make political points. because we're sending a message, perhaps inadvertently, that it's okay to break the law. It's okay to break the law, man. Just go out and break the law, put everybody at risk, put everybody in danger, and then come and see more what you call it, a blight. Then come and simply get a blight. That's not the message we want to send, because Bahamians, when they jump off an airplane in Florida, the first thing they do is click up, put on their seatbelts, put their phones away. Man, we have a country we're trying to develop here. We have a country of restless young people, all too restless, too many times, that we need to teach the right way to behave and conduct themselves if this country is going to come to be what we envision it to be. And I believe we can still be the best little country in the world. But there's some things we just have to, like, you know, when you're defying something that can harm you, like the snake or some deadly reptile, some things we just have to remove the political venom from and let not our good be spoken evil of. Because there's a good thing we're trying to do here today. It's a very good thing. And I want to commend the administration. I want to commend the Attorney General for the good work that he continues to do in this regard. Yeah. History will judge us for what we did. The people judged us already. Right? The people judge, and that's the beautiful thing about democracy. I know that's the beautiful thing about democracy. If you're going to judge me for trying to save lives and doing the right thing and not being concerned about the politics, I could live with that. Mea culpa. I could live with that. But some Grammy somewhere thanking us for something we did that perhaps probably still has her here. I promise not to be long, and so with those few remarks, I thank you, Madam President, and I rest.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Darren Hentfield, for your contribution. Before we proceed, Senator Barry Griffin would like to have a few words.
Yes, Madam President, thank you for your indulgence. With your leave, Madam President, I would like to have stricken from the record or expunged from the record the audio recording that I played. I said the substance of the remarks of Mr. Marvin Joseph. The Senate rules, the rule book is quiet on the matter, but for the sake of completeness, I would like to have the actual audio recordings expunged from the record of the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Griffin, for recognizing that. And the rules are in fact quiet on recordings, and I took a quick look at it myself. And so we would not allow any recordings in the future. And the recording that was played is expunged from the record, but the words that you said will be kept on the record. Thank you, Senator Barry Griffin. The chair now recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you, Madam President. And I stand real quickly for the wrap up of the debate today on the Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill, as well as the Rehabilitation of Offenders Expunging of Record Offenses Order 2022. And I want to thank all of our colleagues for a good debate. I want to thank the opposition, even though they would have indicated otherwise in their debate at times, for supporting a promise that this new day government made to the Bahamian people in putting a framework in place and a procedure for the expungement of records for COVID offenses. Before I sit down, and I think the questions that the issues that Senator Seymour raised were adequately dealt with by my colleague. But the issues with what Senator Ramming raised, I would like to again address the procedure that is envisioned in what we are doing today. I thought I was pretty clear in my when I moved the bill, but just in case, I will, because he has asked me to do so, be clear in what we are doing and how it will advance. So the first piece of first instrument we're debating today is the Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill. What this bill does is it includes a new Section 15 into the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. And what this new Section 15 authorizes is, by way of order, which we have here, by way of order, that is to be debated and approved affirmatively by both houses of Parliament, we set forth criteria of what type of convictions are to be expunged and considered rehabilitated. So the bill is the operative mechanism that gives that empowerment. And that empowerment is now permanent in the bill. So for example, we raised a question on monkeypox. If we have this whole scenario on monkeypox, we now have a framework of expunging violations. In the order, and I'll be real quick, just to conclude where we go now, we have an order drafted, and this order will be signed by the Minister of National Security being the operative minister. And what this order says is that it allows, upon application by a person who is so convicted, to request that he be deemed rehabilitated. And the offenses are prescribed in the order, in the schedule. And the offenses in this order, and I'll read them, are any breach of restrictions and any failure to comply with the requirements prescribed in regulations and orders made pursuant to the proclamations of emergency made on the 17th of March 2020, 30th of June 2020, 24th of November 2020, 14th of May 2021, and the Emergency Powers Act. So any violation that fell within the orders under the state of emergencies so listed here, which are the COVID-related state of emergencies, any violations of those orders are now entitled to be deemed rehabilitated after 6 months on application to the minister. The person's names who will be making such applications will not be in the Hansard. They will not be brought to this place. They will not be debated. That is a function of administratively with the Ministry of National Security. So we have no fear or contradiction with respect to that disclosure. So this is the order that empowers that. In order for any other subsequent deemed rehabilitation under the framework of the bill, there will have to be another order. And that order will have to come to Parliament and be debated and be agreed in both houses of Parliament in the interest of transparency. So there's no ability for this to be a willy-nilly, I think he said, use of discretion, because ultimately those offenses come to this place and get debated in full light of the Bahamian people. And so there's nothing untoward. There's nothing that can go off the rails, because ultimately it always is brought here. And so the procedure is in place and designed for that purpose, so that we know what we're doing. It has the affirmative vote of both houses, because it is an important issue for Bahamians. And it is an important issue when you expunge criminal records. Nobody's treating this lightly. Nobody wants to treat it lightly. And the framework is put in place to ensure the integrity and the transparency of the system we are doing, while protecting Bahamians and allowing them this option. So with those few words, I hope that helped with the clarification of the process. And you know, we so move for the second reading of the Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill 2022, and we seek the affirmative resolution of the Senate in support of the Rehabilitation of Offenders Expunging of Records Offenses Order 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act.
What are we gonna do?
Madam President, if I may, at this point, we are approaching the lunch hour, but the Honorable Attorney General would move for the second reading of the Carbon Credit Trading Bill and we propose that we have the second and the debate when we come back from lunch. So I would move a resolution that be it resolved that the Senate will sit beyond 1 p.m. today. Second.
It has been moved and second that the Senate sits beyond the 1 p.m. hour today. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The Senate will sit beyond the 1 p.m. hour today. But just before you proceed, Senator Ryan, there are a few people in the gallery that I wish to recognize because they may have to slip away, like you. The chair recognizes elected executives of the men's branch of the Progressive Liberal Party. Chairman Corrington Burrows, first chair, along with first chair Whistler de Vilma.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming to the gallery today. The chair also recognizes the presence of two of my old and dear friends, April Dean Sims and Elwood Bonamy. Can you please stand? Bonamy. April Dean Sims, she is a veteran 36-year public sector employee, and she currently serves as the branch manager of the Cable Beach Post Office. And Elwood Bonamy is a director of finance of the Private Trust Corporation. The three of us completed grades 1 through 6 as what used to be known as Chippenham Primary School. This school rivaled Oaksfield Primary School. We lived in close proximity to each other in the Chippenham community, and we were all a part of one village. We grew up within the steps of the C4 Aquarium, the Dasher Garden and Zoo, Botanical Gardens, and Fort Charlotte. When we were so territorial, we often referred to these national treasures as our aquarium, our gardens, and our fort. Once again, Elwood, I extend condolences to you, Donna, and Andrew on the passing of your dear and beautiful mother, Beryl Bonamy. And I thank you all for visiting with the chair today in the gallery. Thank you so much. And last but not least, the chair also welcomes Pastor Paul Scovella. He's the current pastor of the Centerville Seventh-day Adventist Church and the former president of the South Bahamas Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. Today, Pastor Scovella is here on a special occasion, and he's gifting each senator with a copy of his recently released book entitled 10 Prayers of Faith. And on behalf of the senators, the chair thanks Pastor Scovella for his lovely book, which we will endeavor to read during our summer break. And I hope that you will stay around for a few more minutes so that we can all get a photo with you. And he has already autographed all copies of the book. So I thank you all so much. I thank you, Pastor Scovella, for bringing the senators a copy of the book. And we appreciate it. I'm sure that we will read it. I already have my copy, so I don't want to take another copy. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here in the gallery with us, and we appreciate you. Oh, really? For the second reading of bills?
Yes. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the indulgence of the colleagues around the table for allowing me to proceed with this first reading. Second reading. Madam President, I rise to move for the second reading today of a bill for an act to regulate the trading of carbon credits in or from within the Bahamas. As the Bahamas is advancing its position with respect to the management of its natural resources for the benefit of its people, and as the objective was identified in our blueprint for change, this bill builds on the framework that we put in place with the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiatives Bill, which was debated earlier in this session. This Carbon Credit Trading Bill 2022 was drafted with the Securities Commission of the Bahamas and provides for a legislative regime to regulate the conduct of carbon trading businesses in or from within the Bahamas, including the trading of carbon credits and other carbon trading products. The regime established by the bill will also include the regulation of carbon trading exchanges that facilitate the trading of carbon credits and other carbon credit products in the secondary market, as well as carbon trading businesses, including the carbon trading registries and the verification bodies. And I'll go on to explain what all of these do. Madam President, this is a continuation of our efforts to position the Bahamas as a world leader in the research and monetization of blue carbon credits, and is another fulfillment of our promises made in our blueprint for change. From before the general election, when the PLP New Day government took office, the Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Philip Brave Davis, chose as a key plank in his New Day platform and a focused policy priority of his government was the advocacy for and development of key policy initiatives regarding climate change and sustainability. Upon coming to office in 2021 of September, our administration immediately began to highlight these issues connected to climate change and the Bahamas and our position in this global reform. 6 days into office, the Prime Minister addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations. While many leaders were focused on the global pandemic still, and rightfully so, the Prime Minister wanted the world to know and remember that when COVID arrived on our shores, the Bahamas was still reeling from catastrophic events as a result of climate change, notably Hurricane Dorian. And he also made note of the intensity of these storms and its effect on the Bahamas. We all know 2 months later, the Prime Minister went to COP26 in Glasgow, where the Prime Minister made the point to his colleagues that small island developing states such as the Bahamas, which are hardest hit by matters of climate change, are the least responsible for causing this climate change and the least responsible for the intensity that we're seeing. But he didn't want to focus on the problem, as the Prime Minister does. He wanted to drive home the importance and then come up with the solutions, at least solutions that better positions the Bahamas in this global pandemic, I might say, of climate change. Our administration has not been content to sit on the sidelines, leaving our fate in other people's hands. Our New Day government will continue to make the case for urgent action as the world moves forward to address the causes of climate change. We intend to play an active role, a leadership role, a powerful role in charting the way forward. Madam President, as a signatory to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, otherwise known as UNFCCC, we are also signatories to the Paris Agreement, and as an output of its recent negotiations during COP26 in Glasgow, it was noted that significant financial support is needed for the country to advance vital climate change mitigation. As we discuss this complex framework, I think it important to walk through how we see carbon credits and its impact on the Bahamas and speak to it in a way where we can understand it, hopefully, at least how the framework and the way forward is for the Bahamas, and put in a plan where we maximize benefit for the Bahamian people. Madam President, carbon markets, in its simplest terms, price a unit of carbon dioxide sequestration for the trade between a buyer and seller. So a carbon credit is like a derivative or some other financial instrument that you trade. It's a commodity of sorts. And a carbon credit is based, in theory, on the amount of carbon that a country's natural resources absorb out of the atmosphere. So if you have assets, natural assets, that absorb carbon out of the atmosphere, that creates a carbon credit. And that creates the commodity that is then traded. Studies indicate that our seagrass beds, and in certain instances our mangroves and salt marshes, absorb a significant amount of carbon out of the atmosphere. This is important as it forms the basis of the blue carbon credits of the Bahamas. That's the underlying theory. I think it important to note, because I have heard some discussions going on in the public, and I don't blame Bahamians for needing to walk through it over and over, because this is a complex and cutting edge framework that we have not played in and we have not participated in. So it is a new frontier. It is a new frontier. A new day brings a new frontier. I think it important to note that this framework does not adversely affect our seagrasses and our mangroves or our natural resources. There's no negative implication on our natural resources. I heard last week some discussion on how this is going to destroy our seagrass and mangroves in order to get the credits. That is absolutely not true. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite, because we will have to create additional frameworks for the preservation of the seagrass and the mangroves, creating additional protected areas, creating additional mitigation areas in order to have the carbon credit. This is called additionality, for example. If you look in the technical, it's called additionality. So we're going to have to do preservation activities on top of what we're doing to ensure we have the carbon credits that we could then monetize for the benefit of the Bahamas. I think it also important to address the framework in which we are participating in this industry and how we have structured our strategic partnerships to maximize our place in this new frontier. As prescribed in the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiatives Act, which we've previously debated, all carbon credits generated from within the Bahamas are property of the Bahamas. Let me say that again. All carbon credits in the Bahamas are the property of the country and will be held in a special purpose vehicle that will be fully transparent. The Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiatives Act also sets out the framework for the scientific research, the validation, the verification, and ultimately the monetization of the carbon credits in the Bahamas through a management company who would have the expertise to do all of this. That is in the legislation that we have recently passed in this place. So we have that as the framework on how we will move forward. We have mitigation activities of our seagrass and our mangroves and our salt marshes, which will translate into carbon credits because we are what they call sequestering carbon out of the atmosphere, absorbing carbon, which helps, especially in the face of these larger countries that emit so much carbon and cause these drastic climate change events. And secondly, we will do this through a management company that is contracted with the government to do the research, the scientific exploration, the verification of the credits, ultimately the custody of the credits, and the monetization and pricing of the credits will all be done by a management company that the government contracts with. And that's in the legislation as well. So nothing here has not been seen or debated by the Bahamian people. The management company will coordinate and be responsible, like I said, for the research, the science, the verification, and ultimately taking the carbon credits to the capital markets, which was where they will be monetized. And they will be sold on a properly regulated carbon credit exchange, which is why we are here today. We have come to an agreement with Carbon Management Limited, a company that is primarily Bahamian-owned and supported by the scientific research of the NGO Beneath the Waves. Beneath the Waves has been researching in the Bahamas for more than 10 years, primarily in the shark space, but now in the seagrass space and the carbon sequestration space. Other principles of Carbon Management Limited are regulated financial and capital markets experts. So you will have the scientific base and the capital markets expertise to bring this from science all the way to monetization. I think it important to note, in the interest of transparency, the government received no fewer than 3 proposals to be the management company. And then Carbon Management Limited was the best, positioned the Bahamas the best, and will result in the highest returns for the Bahamian people. Carbon Management Limited is 49% owned by this consortium and 49% owned by the government of the Bahamas. So therefore, this management company is owned in part by the government of the Bahamas. So you are also participating in the revenues and profits that the management company will make, not only with respect to the contract in the Bahamas to manage the blue carbon credits, but any revenue that they utilize throughout the Caribbean and the hemisphere in doing the same elsewhere. The Bahamian people, through the government, will participate. Carbon Management Limited, which is again 49% owned by the government of the Bahamas, for its management services, will receive a 15% fee, a management fee, based on 15% of the net value of the carbon credits, which come as a result of their activities. It's a management fee. They don't get the carbon credits. Like I said, those are owned by the Bahamas government through a special purpose vehicle. They are performing a service like any other management company, and their remuneration is based on the value of the asset that they are responsible for. That's the framework in which we are participating in. And the Bahamian government owns 49% of that management company. So it will effectively get 49% of the profits of that activity. The economic value for the trade in carbon credits is significant. 1 ton of carbon credits in the voluntary marketplace is valued at $55 a ton. And in Europe, we've seen pricing up to $99 a ton. This value will only further increase as the Article 6 marketplace is advanced and continues, and as we move towards the 2030 and 2050 deadlines where companies and countries have to be net zero from a carbon emissions point of view. As you get closer to that time period, carbon credits become more valuable and the price goes up. We need a framework and an exchange to be able to sell our carbon credits in the marketplace. Why not have this marketplace be in the Bahamas? Why not own a piece of this marketplace as the Bahamian government? That is what we're doing. That is why the Carbon Credit Trading Bill 2022 is here today, to create the framework to do just this. It provides for a comprehensive legislative regulatory framework for the operation of a carbon market exchange and related businesses. So this bill is to operationalize a regulated exchange in which you will sell the carbon credits on, and have it regulated by the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, based in the Bahamas, with the Bahamian government owning a piece of the exchange as well, which will then create additional revenue opportunities for the government of the Bahamas and therefore the people of the Bahamas. You know, I think it's important to be completely transparent in this process. The government, through Carbon Management Limited, have already entered into discussions with a world-leading exchange to facilitate the creation of the Bahamas Carbon Credit Exchange. We hope to be well on our way to monetizing carbon credits and trading of those carbon credits in the international marketplace on an exchange owned in part by the Bahamian government by this time next year. Seeing fruits of our labor, seeing benefit from the new frontier that has been brought into effect by this New Day government. That's what we do, and again, we don't waste no time when we do it. We make things happen. The bill will establish this regulatory framework, like I said, for a carbon credit exchange in the Bahamas. The bill consists of 52 clauses divided into 7 parts. It's a rather comprehensive piece of legislation. These parts define the terms specific to carbon credit markets, establish the categories of persons and activities who will be regulated under this bill, stipulate the process for the registration of the carbon trading business, stipulate the financial and data protection and compliance obligations of the licensed exchange, and addresses the Commission's functions on investigative and cooperative powers. This piece of legislation meets all the criteria of our international obligations as well, from anti-money laundering and counter-finance of terrorism obligations to proper investigative and oversight from the regulator. All of that is embedded in this bill. Part 1 of the bill just sets out the short title. Part 2 of the bill stipulates that the Commission is the operative regulatory agency. Part 3 of the bill discusses the registration of a carbon trading business and specifically speaks to the type of businesses that are regulated here under this legislation, requires adequate financial resources and disclosures and audits so everything is transparent. It's just like another regulated and licensed entity by the Securities Commission of the Bahamas. Creates a framework for investigation and cooperation, meeting our international obligations, and imposes the anti-money laundering obligations on the licensees. This piece of legislation, frankly, is trailblazing internationally. One of the first to prescribe a specific framework for the trading in carbon credits in all over the world. In fact, when the executive chairman of the Securities Commission came back from her meeting at IOSCO, which is the International Organization of Securities Commissions, the International Organization of Regulators, she said they asked her to be on the steering committee because no country is as advanced as we are in our legislation and regulation surrounding carbon credit marketplace. I must commend the Prime Minister for giving his direction and vision in this regard from early on. His vision of where we are going as a country. And it is my mandate to fulfill his vision. And that is what we are doing. We are pioneering the blue carbon space, contributing to the design and the framework internationally. Many will copy us. Many will try to do what we do. And that's the importance of having the management company that has the experience that the government is a shareholder in. Because when they try to copy us, they're going to want the management company who put it in place to do it for them. And when they do it for them, the Bahamas shares in that. That's the nature of the structure in which we have established. We will take this frontier to the world, and we will participate across the globe. We are going into the global marketplace that we create. We are at the front of the frontier, making it happen and bringing the benefits back to this greatest little country in all of the world. We should be proud of our Prime Minister for leading the way. We should be proud of the vision of this New Day government, the bravery to step out and be a leader in an area that is revolutionary. That's what we do. And I commend the Prime Minister for his vision and his motivation to get it done. Madam President, with those few words, I move for the second reading of a bill for an act to regulate the trading of carbon credits in or from within the Bahamas. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Madam President, I move that the business of the Senate do suspend until 3 p.m. this afternoon.
It has been moved in second that the business of the Senate is suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The business of the Senate is suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.